And that's when the potential suitors come into the picture. We saw Pep Guardiola's quotes at the end of last week. And even before he had said that, I was being led to believe by a number of contacts that Erling Haaland was not going to be coming to Manchester City this summer, that they were not willing to pay the sort of fee and salary it's going to take and get involved in a bidding war, which is something they've not really
Well,
done with any player.
and Pep and Mino Raiola, of course, famously get on like a house on fire, literally a house on fire.
Yeah, so there is that animosity as well, but I don't think it was just a public play from Pep's perspective. I was being told on really good authority that they're not in this mix this summer, and if that proves to be true, it will be fascinating, not just for his situation, but who, if anyone, they do end up going for, because I think they will pursue an attacker despite what Pep said. And that's where I'd like to bring Simon in before we throw it to Tom on the actual numbers, because Chelsea are a well-documented suitor, first reported by Simon in my Monday column quite a few weeks ago, that they would be pushing hard for Haaland this summer. So, Simon, a relatively brief answer from you. Do you think he'll be coming to Chelsea, or do you think he's best suited to another club?
Oh, I think he's definitely suited for Chelsea, but him coming to Chelsea, as I wrote in January, they're always going to be up against it because are they one of the sort of genuine sort of big clubs in Haaland's eyes? Now they have flirted with him before, and they have made moves to smooth things over a little bit with Mino Raiola in recent months, because if you remember, Chelsea and Mino Raiola didn't exactly get on that great over the Romelu Lukaku deal, which Antonio Conte wasn't too delighted about. So I think there's been news made to try and sort of smooth things over. But as I wrote in January, they're always going to be up against it. But this is Roman Abramovich. When he wants a big name player, he certainly is going to make a move to get that big name player. But we are talking astronomical sums. They're going to have to smash the transfer record that they've set with Kepa and Stroke Kai Havertz if all the adults kick in. So they're up against it, but the whole point is they see Haaland as someone that can turn them from sort of a top four kind of side back to a Premier League, Champions League contending side.
Yeah, there's a view from Manchester City, which I've picked up on in recent weeks, that Real Madrid hold the aces with this deal. If they decide to go for him and put the money behind him in a way that they've not done since the Hazard deal, really, then they will get him. They're in the driving seat. If they don't or can't finance it, then obviously it's open, and other clubs like Chelsea, for instance, maybe even Manchester United, we've seen the historical links and his close ties with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, may get involved, and Barcelona too, because despite their perilous financial situation, there's a huge bank loan secured by the new president, Joan Laporta. So, Tom, the numbers. Where would Haaland be best suited to play his football if indeed he's to leave Dortmund this summer?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I mean, I think it's nice to start with just the numbers on his scoring, because it is just so incredible, really. I mean, Robert Lewandowski leads the way quite extremely, really. He's got 29 non-penalty goals this season, which Haaland's the next highest after that, joint with Lionel Messi with 20. But Haaland's, I mean, he's got 13 years on Messi and he's got 16 years on Cristiano Ronaldo, who scored 19 non-penalty goals. So the goal scoring numbers kind of speak for themselves, really. But away from that, stylistically, he is very much a poacher. I mean, he links play a lot. He receives the ball in the box a lot, but off the ball, he really doesn't add much. I mean, he's made 9 tackles and 8 interceptions in his whole Bundesliga career for Dortmund, which tells you everything about his aptitude to press, potentially out of possession. So I think stylistically, you're looking at a team which is using their striker maybe a little bit in build-up. They're very reliant on them at scoring, which is something that Haaland does so well. So I think it's quite difficult to look away from Chelsea as an option. I mean, Tammy Abraham's Chelsea's top non-penalty goal scorer this season with 6 goals. After that, you've got Timo Werner, Mason Mount. Chelsea have always been a team which have had a very obvious player who they're going to for goals. You know, you think of Didier Drogba, you think of players of that ilk that they've had in the past, and Haaland just fits that bill. He just, I guess, looks like a sort of player that Chelsea would have, a kind of pure goal scorer. But elsewhere you've got Real Madrid and Barcelona, which I think stylistically Real aren't too far away from Dortmund. Barcelona are a lot more kind of possession heavy, and that would be something slightly different for him. But both teams have one kind of single source of goals. They're both 33 years old in Messi and Benzema, and both teams need to move on from those talents, which are essentially the reason for a lot of their recent successes. So style of play wise, maybe the fit isn't there, but both need to invest to kind of guarantee their future. You see what happens when the likes of, say, Arsenal or even Real Madrid themselves haven't reinvested after Ronaldo, or Arsenal after even Wenger or recent players. It's really important that you get that reinvestment right to ensure the kind of long-term future of the club. So those are the main ones for me. Liverpool are an interesting one, but I think financially, I think the profile to Firmino we've spoken about on Ask Ornstein before is totally different, really. So those are ones. But Haaland's a pure goal scorer, and I think anywhere he goes, the style of fit maybe isn't all that important because he's ruthless.
It's a fascinating situation because on the one hand, you've got clubs looking at their finances during a pandemic, and despite FFP rules being relaxed somewhat, you imagine if they've got a credible opportunity to get Haaland. As Simon reported in January, when Chelsea were we first reported that Chelsea were going to make a concerted effort this summer. Could a club steal a march on their rivals this time round and try and nip in, even at great expense, and get a player who over the next decade looks like he's going to score absolute bags of goals and help a club towards success? Or do we wait until the summer of 2022 and see them all scrap it out over his 75 million euros release clause? As a complete guess, I'm starting to think, when you listen to the likes of Pep Guardiola and you hear information and you look at club finances, that he might well stay and leave in the summer of 2022, despite all of our conversations. From a journalistic point of view, I hope I'm proved wrong, so we have a big deal to talk about this summer. I'm going to finish on Haaland where I started with Raph and just ask what your current sense is on where he will end up, if at all, this summer.
I think it's going to be very difficult for the two clubs in Spain to find the kind of money needed to get him out of Dortmund. I think a lot of the stuff that we will see now is laying the groundwork for next season. And it's not unfeasible, or it's not unimaginable that Mino Raiola might come to a pre-agreement with the club for next season, that they will trigger the release clause, but they will commit already maybe 6 months in advance to go to that club for, of course, a certain advance in handshakes and all this kind of stuff that comes with it. This is just my hunch. I just don't see the big bidding war this season. I just don't think the money is there. And I think there's another factor which is rarely discussed. Unless there is a huge incentive to participate in a transfer fee on behalf of the player this year, which I don't think there is from anything I know, it is actually not in the player's interest to leave for a huge transfer fee if he can leave for probably half the transfer fee next year, because a lot of that difference of money saved, in inverted commas, will end up back in the pockets of the player and his advisors. In the sense of a huge sign-on fee that will be much bigger next year. So I still think that Dortmund are right to be confident about keeping him. And unless somebody finds a lot of money in unexpected places over the next few months, I think there's still a strong chance we see him in a yellow shirt next year.